History remembers warriors whose names survived centuries long after their deaths. Some fought for land, some for honor, and some because they had nothing left to lose. This is the story of the most feared fighters of forgotten ages. In the northern province of Illyria, a storm rolled across the hills as a young captive was chained inside a wooden training pit. His name was Kael Voren, once a soldier of the coastal kingdom of Arthon, before he was betrayed and sold into slavery for refusing to execute civilians. The man who bought him was Lord Marvek, owner of a brutal combat arena where prisoners were turned into weapons. Every day, Kael was forced to fight other captives under the watch of armored overseers. Failure meant punishment, starvation, or death. The arena was not built for sport, but for survival, and only the strongest were allowed to live. In 73 BCE, Kael and a group of prisoners planned an escape during a transport between cities. They had no real weapons, only broken tools, chains, and stolen blades from the kitchen carts. When night fell, they struck, killing the guards in silence, and chaos erupted as they broke free into the wilderness. They fled toward the Black Ridge Mountains, a place so harsh that imperial soldiers rarely followed them. Along the way, escaped laborers, deserters, and outlaw hunters joined their group, seeing Kael as the only man capable of leading them through impossible odds. The Empire considered them insignificant. At first, just another group of fugitives that would die in the wild. But Kael understood that if they survived even one season, they would become a symbol that others would follow. A small imperial unit was sent to block the mountain passes, expecting hunger and cold to finish the job. But Kael discovered a hidden canyon path covered by ice and roots. During a freezing night, they climbed through the cliffs and appeared behind the enemy camp at dawn. Striking with brutal precision, the imperial force collapsed in hours, and word of the defeat spread faster than any messenger could travel. The rebellion had begun. Kael Voren and his growing band of fugitives moved deeper into the Black Ridge Mountains, where survival itself became a daily battle. The Empire believed the harsh winter would destroy them without needing another army, but Kael turned desperation into structure. He organized the group into small units, each trained to move silently through forests and strike quickly before disappearing into the snow. Villages hidden in the valleys began to whisper about ghost fighters who appeared at night and vanished before dawn. Some called them spirits, others called them cursed, but more and more people left everything behind to join Kael's ranks. Each new recruit brought different skills: hunters, blacksmiths, former soldiers, and even monks who had abandoned their temples. The Empire finally responded with a formal military campaign, sending experienced commander Lucien Corps to crush the uprising. Lucien was known for his discipline and ruthless efficiency, and he believed the rebellion would end within weeks. He set up fortified camps at every valley entrance, cutting off supplies and escape routes, expecting starvation to do what swords could not. But Kael studied the terrain more carefully than any mapmaker. He discovered old smuggler tunnels running beneath the mountains, connecting forgotten mining sites and abandoned forts. Using these hidden paths, his forces bypassed the blockades and struck imperial supply lines, one after another, burning wagons and freeing prisoners taken during raids. Lucien grew frustrated as every strategy failed, and his soldiers began to fear that they were fighting something they could not see or understand. Kael's reputation grew not as a man, but as an unstoppable force, moving through the mountains like a shadow. The Empire that once ignored him now began to see him as a threat capable of destabilizing entire regions. As Kael's rebellion expanded beyond the Black Ridge Mountains, the Empire escalated its response by deploying elite legions from the capital, led by General Varro Selvin, a commander who had never lost a battlefield engagement. Varro believed war was mathematics and that any uprising could be solved through overwhelming force and discipline. He gathered thousands of soldiers and marched into the highlands, intending to corner Kael in the open valleys where escape would be impossible. But Kael did not fight battles on open ground. Instead, He used speed deception and constant relocation, striking only when conditions guaranteed victory. Scouts reported that entire Imperial patrols disappeared without a trace, while supply depots burned overnight, leaving no evidence of attackers. Varro attempted to trap Kael by sealing all mountain exits and forcing a final confrontation. But Kael anticipated the move and split his forces into smaller groups that melted into different regions of the wilderness. Some blended into rural towns, others hid within merchant caravans, and a few stayed in the mountains. Continuing guerrilla strikes, Varro realized too late that he was not facing a single army, but a network that could not be destroyed by traditional warfare. The empire began to suffer political tension as reports of defeat spread fear through the Senate. Wealthy landowners demanded protection, while frontier regions began openly supporting the rebels. In secret, Kael's name became a symbol of resistance, spoken in whispers across taverns and markets, even inside imperial cities. Meanwhile, Kael himself remained distant from fame, focusing only on survival and strategy, knowing that the moment he became predictable was the moment he would die. As the war stretched on, Kael Voren's rebellion transformed from a mountain escape into a full-scale civil crisis the empire could no longer ignore. General Varro Selvan changed tactics, abandoning large formations, and instead deployed elite hunter units trained specifically to track guerrilla fighters through forests, rivers, and ruins. These units were commanded by Captain Dren Malcor, a ruthless tracker who studied every known raid, every burned caravan, and every rumor of Kael's movements. Dren began closing in piece by piece, eliminating rebel safe points and forcing Kael's forces into constant motion. For the first time, Kael suffered real losses. Entire cells were captured, and public executions were carried out in conquered towns to break morale. But instead of fear, the empire saw the opposite effect. More people began joining the rebellion, angered by imperial cruelty. Kael adapted quickly, abandoning fixed camps entirely and turning the entire region into a mobile network of hidden signals, coded messages, and rotating safe routes. He never stayed in one place longer than a night. Dren realized Kael was not trying to win battles, but to outlast the empire itself, turning time into his greatest weapon. Meanwhile, inside the imperial capital, political instability grew, as senators argued whether Kael was a terrorist or a liberator. Wealthy provinces threatened to stop paying taxes unless protected from raids, and even some imperial officers quietly resigned, refusing to fight a war that seemed endless. Varro Selvan ordered a final strategy to lure Kael into the Ashen Valley, a wide-open plain surrounded by cliffs where escape would be impossible and where imperial cavalry could finally end the rebellion. Once and for all, Kael understood the trap immediately. But instead of avoiding it, he began preparing for something that neither Varro nor Dren expected: a final confrontation that would decide not only his fate, but the future of the entire empire. The Ashen Valley became the final stage of the war, as both sides prepared for a confrontation that would decide everything. Kael Voren gathered what remained of his forces, not as an army, but as a unified movement: fighters, survivors, and defected imperial soldiers who had chosen to abandon their own banners. Varro Selvan deployed his entire elite legion surrounding the valley with disciplined formations and siege weapons designed to crush anything inside the open ground. Captain Dren Malcor personally led. The forward scouts convinced that this time Kael would have no escape routes left. When dawn broke, Kael entered the valley not in hiding, but openly signaling that the battle would begin on his terms. His forces did not charge immediately. Instead, they scattered into carefully planned positions, using terrain shadows and pre-placed markers to confuse enemy coordination. Varro ordered a full advance, expecting to overwhelm them through numbers, but Kael's strategy was not to resist directly. It was to break structure itself. Rebel units struck at supply points, signaling towers, and command riders, causing confusion to spread faster than orders could be delivered. Dren attempted to reach Kael directly, cutting through the chaos, but Kael anticipated his path and intercepted him in a ruined watchtower where the two fought briefly. Kael survived, but Dren fell, marking the collapse of imperial coordination. With communication. Broken panic spread through the imperial ranks, and what was meant to be a decisive battle turned into a disorganized retreat. Kael's forces pressed the advantage, forcing Varros' army to withdraw from the valley, leaving behind weapons and wounded soldiers. The empire did not fall in a single moment, but the Ashen Valley became the point where its control began to fracture. Kael's rebellion had not only survived, it had reshaped the balance of power across the entire region, and his name would continue to spread long after the battle ended as a symbol of defiance against impossible odds.